Welcome back, my brave and beautiful humans. Another episode of Soul Hygiene. I am so excited. Um, I have my friend Miss Tammy here, and wow, she's amazing. I appreciate her so much. Her knowledge and little nuggets of gold that she has already given me has just really helped me with this podcast. Some things that she has really brought forth to the table to really get my mind going on things that I can do. She's amazing. I can't wait for you guys to meet her. Miss Tammy's a transformational coach, a mom. Um, what else did we she just wears so many hats. So
Here,
many hats.
yeah, all the things, you know.
So many hats. But we have been trying to get this one together. Like this is like I think the third time we have scheduled this. But I think the last time, by the way, how was your house? Because I know that there was you flooded in California.
I live in California. It was crazy, 80-mile-per-hour winds. It was insane. And we don't do well here in California with that kind of weather, as you can imagine. So, but it's all back to calm.
Oh, good. Oh, good. We're expecting another snowstorm here in Iowa, so yay! Can't wait
Yeah.
for spring. But I was just hoping, could you tell everybody a little bit about what you do, what your background is, anything you'd like to share? So we'll just see where the episode goes.
Absolutely. I'll try to keep it brief. I never know exactly where to start. But I am a mom of four and actually early on worked in the fitness industry, was super passionate just about helping people. Had struggled myself when I was younger with eating disorder, exercise disorder.
Mm.
So I had to show up and help others. And then I decided to homeschool. I homeschooled for 12 years, absolutely loved it. And then found myself needing and wanting more and stepped my toe back into the work arena. I started out with a clean beauty brand and working for myself, which was different but really fun. And then ended up now working as a transformational business coach. So my coach and mentor, his name is Bob Heilig, he literally not only changed my business, but changed my life in so many ways. So it is such a gift and an honor now to be able to do that for others and just love helping people. And it's so crazy. I feel like it was a divine intervention that we met
Yeah,
um,
agree.
because, yeah, those are all the beautiful things of my life, but I've had a lot of trauma as well.
Yeah. I I I was thinking back the other day, I noticed that we had the podcast this week, and I was like, I have never had that one experience where you meet a person and immediately you have so much in common, like your your energy, your everything. It was the most amazing thing. And I remember our first conversation and I had reached out to you because I loved what you posted on Facebook and I was like, you'd be a great guest on the podcast. And then when we met, I was amazed. I was like, this is really divine. I feel like God has put her in my path for a reason. So let's see where it goes. And already, I mean, I've really taken a lot of your advice and your just like I call them little nuggets, little nuggets of gold because really that's what they are, just these little blessings. So I appreciate you so, so much for, just being who you are as a person. And, the trauma, we have a lot in common there too, right? That's
Yeah.
our
And that
history of
part of my instant love for you is just your willingness to be transparent and to
um,
talk hard conversations.
yeah, it's
It's it's so important. I didn't know that until I actually became more public with talking about my story. But and you know this because you're seeing it and living it, when people start sharing, you realize that these are conversations that we need to have. So I love, and appreciate what you are doing, and you are just so incredibly gifted. And I just believe that you offer so much hope.
Mm, thank you. that means a lot to me, really. Um, when we first talked, I know that you had shared a little bit about your your trauma, what you had been through in the past, and a lot of what I had been through, was very similar. But I think the two main areas that we had discussed or talked about were two things that really we had to come to ourselves about, not to anyone else, but that was definitely something we had to do, was take accountability and forgive.
Mhm.
And I know for me that, looking back on my journey specifically, that was a hard thing to do because when you're a victim of circumstance or a victim of trauma or, a victim of what someone has done to you, inside, because we're humans, we're flawed, we don't feel like we've done anything wrong. But that's what soul hygiene's about, soul scrubbing, getting in there, saying, okay, I need to take responsibility for this, or I did do this.
Mhm.
Or is it, from for me in one of my relationships, my accountability was staying in that relationship, you know, having my kids see the abuse.
Yeah.
And that was a hard, hard thing to really grasp and then have to take in and be like, oh my goodness, that's me. That wasn't him, that was me. So,
Yes. And that was a huge, huge part of my story. And as I shared with you, I was married for 24 years and um, wouldn't have known to actually call it abusive while I was in it. I was a believer, and I shared some of the stories of how I was instructed from the church or people in the church, and I have no hard feelings towards those people. I believe that they had a good heart and they were trying to do the right things. But I was manipulated and controlled in every single aspect of my life. I was
mm,
mentally abused. My faith was questioned. I was told because of my former abuse as a child, being sexually abused, that I was not saved because I wasn't a new creation. That because I
mm,
still have trauma that would come up for me from time to time, that I must not really be saved because I had these issues, right? And it was sad. I'm 54 years old now, and I found a journal from my 20s crying out to God, saying, I love you and I believe that I'm saved, but maybe I'm not. So there was
mm,
lots of mental abuse, but also tied in with spiritual abuse. Scripture was used against me. I was told over and over, when you learn how to submit properly, submit, 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 which in all honesty, I tried to do. I loved my husband. I tried to honor what I thought, you know,
mhm,
the Bible said, all the things. But it was never good enough. It was never enough. And there was financial abuse. I didn't have I had a bank account, but I had no money in it and would have to ask permission to, if I wanted to meet you for coffee, I would have to ask him and he would have to deposit it and then I would have to give a receipt. That's the level of control and abuse. Um, Fast forward, I prayed for years. I believed that God was going to use my marriage as a ministry and that it was going to be healed and that we would help other people. I wasn't perfect, wasn't a perfect wife, but I loved my husband. I was faithful. I tried to do everything I could. But what I realize now is that God is using my
mhm,
marriage way, because abuse is abuse. And the type of abuse that I endured, if I would have walked around with a black eye, people would have seen it or known it or tried to help, but it's invisible,
mhm,
happening all around us.
yeah,
And so that was a big part of it. But tying back into what we were talking about of that understanding is I too had 4 kids who endured the same type of abuse. They were
Yeah.
controlled, they were manipulated, they were all the things that I experienced, they did as well. And I would try to protect them. But as you know, I'll try not to get emotional.
It's okay.
I lost my son Joshua, who was 19, in December 2022. And I had to reconcile. Um, he he played football and he had gotten injured when he was 15. His dad was all about football. He had played in college and he, was very much pushed my kids. And it was their relationship was all about football. Anyway, long story short, he ended up becoming addicted to drugs. And the battle of a lifetime came on trying to help him and trying to get him help. He later was diagnosed with bipolar and crazy enough, shortly after his dad left us, he was diagnosed with the bipolar and it just went downhill. And for about 6 months before he passed, he actually was sober. It's probably part of why he died. It was accidental overdose of fentanyl. Um, but that was a hard pill to swallow because knowing that I stayed and I blame myself because I said wasn't strong enough. I didn't. I mean, I really was convinced I wasn't good enough. I wasn't strong enough. I couldn't provide for my kids. I couldn't survive. Um, so, but what taking that personal responsibility did for me was it was a first step in that healing because it allowed me to reflect on because the damaged person that I was in that marriage and allowed those things started way before him. It started as the little girl that was abused, that became a people pleaser, that
Hmm.
allowed to treat me horribly, right? So, but it was important for me because the other steps of that is I had to come to terms with forgiving. And that in the beginning, oh, let me tell you, I'm like, I had so much anger and hurt and resentment and all the things, right? And really, I had a spiritual mentor. Her name was Mama Betty. She passed last year, but she was the one that came to me and just said, you know, this is what's holding you back. And so I had to go back, way back, and start in the beginnings of forgiving all the way back.
Yeah.
And the hardest person to forgive was myself.
Yeah.
But when I did, is literally, I was like, my life completely was transformed. And when you talk about it, and it's funny, I love the name of your podcast. I love the name Soul Scrubbing because it is legitimately scrubbing and digging into those places that are so deep and broken. And I don't know about you, I'm guessing most people that I meet who've gone through similar situations. Um, I lived in avoidance. I was busy all the time,
All the time.
all the time, and busy taking care of everyone else.
Yeah.
In a moment,
So
I would
I
because
still catch myself doing that.
I still do it. Well,
Yeah.
and I would find myself like, because you know what I would think about is all those times that I felt so alone that I didn't have anybody there to help me. So my heart is like, I don't want anybody to feel alone. And I just love that you have so many practical tools for people to like walk through this process because it is a process. It
It
doesn't
is.
It doesn't just happen overnight. Um, I wish
No.
I that it did, but but I think that's all part of God's plan. Like I can honestly sit here today and tell you that I have more peace and more joy than I've ever had in my entire
Mm,
life.
same.
And it's not because of circumstances, because I have court again this month. I have it's there's still things, right? But there is something about that peace beyond understanding
Oh
when
yeah.
when you experience that type of healing. Um, that I really think those two things are just so significant. And it starts with that personal responsibility in it, and also just the process of forgiveness.
Yeah. Something you said I wanted to it bothers me that people would say this, but when you're saved, and as a Christian, when we refer to as being saved, it's asking God into our hearts. Um, but for someone to say that what they said to you about not being a new creature, and Paul says through the Bible, he was a murderer, a tax collector named Saul, and God changed his name to Paul, and he was saved on the road to Damascus. And Paul says all through Bible in Hebrews where he talks about I have to die daily. Paul is aware that he is a sinner. He is aware that there are things in his life that are not godly or could turn to be not godly. And he says, I wake up daily and I have to die to those things. So my my thoughts first on being a Christian and going through trauma. I I don't call myself a religious person. I call myself a convicted person. I am who I am. I believe what I believe by conviction. That's what I believe. But I go to church because I need it, because I'm a sinner, because I want to have that worship with God. I don't go because I'm better than anyone. And I think that's the one thing that really deters people from really searching. And I know I'm getting off on a tangent here, but it kind of it bothers me that people think that everyone that goes to church thinks they're better than everyone else and that they don't have any issues and that you know, they're goody two shoes or whatever, words they use because we do.
Oh,
A
I
Christian can be oppressed just like anybody else.
well, and I was the perfect example of it. I served in ministry for almost 20 years,
Hmm.
had this feeling like, of course, I had to make everything appear like it was okay because I'm supposed to be in this leadership position.
Yeah.
And I literally had people who I knew through that wept and sobbed when they heard. They're like, how could it be? And you guys were amazing and you're cute kids and your family, it's all perfect. What I want to say to your listeners is nobody's life is perfect. Nobody.
Exactly.
I don't care how perfect it looks on the outside, it is not perfect. And I think the one thing that I learned, and again, like I'm sure that there were times throughout ministry I didn't do things right because I just was kind of doing what I had learned from others. That I will tell you right now, I will never, ever, ever, ever in my life stand in any form. And I never did it intentionally, but I'm sure I did it of judgment because until you're walking in someone's shoes,
Hmm.
I mean, I would have
Yeah.
never, I homeschooled my kids for 12 years. My children knew scripture better than probably most people. Every single day of their lives, we did Bible, and my son was brilliant, brilliant, could memorize entire books of the Bible. He programmed in 7 different computer languages. If you would have ever asked me if my son Joshua would end up addicted to drugs and die from it, there's no way. I would have been, there's no way. There's no, I'm doing all the right things, right?
Right.
But that's just, it's such an important message to people, because I will say that a big part of that healing journey for me, honestly, was and is my faith. Because when I had nothing left, and when I tell you nothing, I was left with 46 cents. I had nothing. A mom who had a stroke and is disabled that I care for, and 4 kids. And I live in California and it's very expensive. But these 4 words legitimately, and again, my mama Betty mentor, she said, I will stand in the gap for you. And even when you don't believe it, just speak, I trust you, Father.
Mhm.
And it was life changing. It was literally life changing. So it makes me sad, because I think a lot of people do. I think sadly people label God by people, but we're all broken. Everybody's going to fail us at one point and another. It's just because we're human and we're flawed. And so,
Right.
yeah.
And I appreciate you saying that because, when before I started my healing journey, m- I was at the precipice of, do I even want to live? So how can a Christian think like that?
You're
Well,
human.
it's because the accountability I had to take was it's because I let myself think all those thoughts, those negative things, I had to take responsibility for what I let into my mind
Well,
and
that's
what,
a
em
podcast. I'm going to
yeah,
definitely
yeah.
thoughts. I mean,
I let my emotions and my mind control my actions instead of,
and I don't know about you,
yeah.
but thoughts often still, it's a daily battle of they lie, they're lies.
Oh, yes, yes.
It's
I
it's really not true.
no. And that's the thing I try to express on the podcast when I can is that where your thoughts are is where your life will lead you. The negative thoughts will take you down a path you probably don't want to go. And that's why I'm always like, you know, your mindset is a big, big deal.
Huge.
Soul scrubbing is a big, big deal because what you have inside could control what you have up here. And, and it is a battle because I had to go all the way back to the R word when that happened and relive it in order
Mm,
to forgive it and then move on. But it did not happen in a day.
no.
That experience took me months.
Mhm.
And some people it takes some years. It took me months because I was ready. I was like, I'm done living like this. I'm ready to heal. I'm ready to move on with my life, not have the PTSD, not have the nightmares, not have, all the things that came with it. Um, but every day, you know, there are things or somebody will say something and I'll remember an instance or I'll remember um and you're right, like if I had bruises or black eyes, people would have said, "Whoa, get out of it." You know?
Intervention. Yeah.
Yeah. But a lot of the scars I have, no one sees. And
Yeah.
so you have to be very careful when you're talking to people because you don't know the life they've led. You don't know what they've been through, how how on the precipice they were of just ending their life. And so I'm the same way. I try very hard not to be judgmental of people. Obviously, we're human, you know, we slip. But to try and be compassionate and kind, when somebody is yelling at me and I'm like, wait a second, what happened this morning that you're in this mood? Like talk to me about it first. So I am thankful that way that God has kind of given me that insight and that clarity to be like, you went through this, you know what it looks like, you know what these invisible scars mean, you know what they may mean to somebody else. So before you get upset at what they're doing, let's try to be kind, let's try to be compassionate. And I have really learned how to practice the pause.
Yes. No,
That was
I
that's a
know it.
major thing.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
I agree.
yeah,
And I don't know about you, but a big part of this too has been naming and recognizing. And I have a lot of weird words are really important to me. And I have learned to try to be really mindful about the words I use on myself or for others. But and I don't love this word, but it's just what I know to call it. But there are triggers that come out of nowhere.
yeah,
And I'm like, where did that come from? But the greatest part about this process and healing and learning is that being aware that it's not just a reaction, that I can
right,
have the to filter and to question and to ask myself, like, okay. And then the other big thing for me, because I was never allowed to do anything without being controlled, is allowing myself to feel. That was a big deal for me, to give myself permission. Like, it's okay to be sad. It's okay to be mad. It's okay. But I don't choose to stay in those places. But
right.
I acknowledge it. And that was such a big deal for me, to be able to actually acknowledge that emotions were good and that I was created with them for a reason, not to suppress them, because most of my life it was suppression.
I think that's a whole nother podcast too. Just
I know.
like yeah, we're gonna have to do one of those
Yes.
for
Yes.
sure. But I think the one thing you had said is about triggers. We are not responsible for each other's triggers. And I think that's the thing nowadays is that
Mm,
everyone steps on eggshells because I don't want to say this wrong or I don't want to say this wrong or I don't. Okay, just be kind, but I'm not responsible for your triggers and you're not responsible for mine. That comes with emotional maturity.
mhm.
And I am learning every day. I don't think that's something that just happens, especially when you've gone through years and years of trauma. I think emotional maturity is something that develops when you're going through your healing process because you find out, oh, I don't have to defend myself, or I don't have to get internally angry and not be able to express it, or, it's something that really, when I learned, it almost gave me freedom,
Oh,
you know, because I would just get so emotional every time I got screamed at. And I
mhm.
was screamed at all the time or called names or whatever. I would just get so emotional. I'd either bust out into tears or I'd just try to lash out the best I could back at him to defend myself or my kids. But now it's almost like you said, that peace, where I know if someone comes at me, how to respond in a respectful and compassionate way, even if they're not being respectful.
Mhm.
And the Bible says, "A merry heart worketh well as a medicine," right?
Yes.
Um, or a what's the verse? "A sweet answer turneth away wrath."
Yes.
Um, I think those 2, just remembering those through my journey has really helped because now I use it in my everyday life, or at least try to, um, when necessary. But
And sorry.
no, go ahead, go ahead.
No, I just, it's such an important reminder that I love what you said about we're not responsible for someone else's triggers. And with the same love and grace that we would hope that somebody would have for us, that it is that emotional maturity. And learning for me was a part of that process, was surrounding myself with people that do that.
Right. And I think when I started healing, I also found a whole different group of people.
Oh,
Yeah.
completely.
Yeah. When you're in a different when you're in a different mind space, when you're in a different soul space, you connect with people that normally back when you weren't, you know,
Yeah.
in a really good in a good space, that just become your tribe. I call them my soul tribe, obviously, because of soul hygiene, but
Yeah.
it's nice to have those people you can rely on to be like, I can talk to them, I can be mature about what I say. I know that they're going to be respectful and kind back, you know. And I love having people, obviously, like you, who can be vulnerable, who who can tell their story and just hope that it helps someone. I think we need more people to tell their stories, honestly.
Oh,
And I know that that's part of what this podcast is. I really, really want people to come out of that victimized mindset because I know once they become victorious over whatever is holding them back within their own minds, there could be I call soul hygiene a brand movement because there could be a movement of people who are willing to say, hey, I've been through it,
yep.
but look at me now. There is hope for you too.
Yes.
Um, and that's part of the movement part of soul hygiene. It's like I want this call to action. We don't have to be victims, no
No,
matter if you've created it in your head or if you truly are a victim of circumstances that have happened to you. Um, I just truly believe that you can be victorious no matter what has happened to you. And I think it's been proven time and time again. You
absolutely.
just have to be willing to look inside, do some soul scrubbing.
Soul scrubbing, right? And then I think the last thought that came to my mind was in that process of, I totally believe that no matter who you are, or what struggles you've had, or what you've been through, if it's trauma or whatever it is, that it wasn't by accident. And that's hard. That was hard for me at first to be like, but why? Why? Why me? Why? Why? But when I let go of the why and I changed that into because, because
Mhm.
you can live with someone, because you can mourn with the mourning, because you can understand sexual trauma, because you can understand invisible abuse,
Mhm.
because the human element that this world so desperately needs, um, is that we just love each other, love
Yeah.
God, love. And when you have been through these things, and I'll tell you what, and I know for sure, seeing your heart and serving and helping people, is it's healing when you
Mm.
lend that hand to someone else. And even it's not that you have it all figured it out. It's not like I have it all figured out. I still have days I'm like, I don't know, I'm a mess, right?
Right.
But to show up anyway,
Yeah.
and just sometimes a smile, a hello, take the time to listen. There are so many people in this world that are hurting, um, in silence, but maybe surrounded by people. That
Yeah.
was me. I had lots of people in my life, but I was silently suffering and dying inside.
Yeah.
Oh,
The same for me. Like, and the people around me love me. Like, my
yeah.
parents love me. People I grew up with love me. I think the one thing you said, I don't believe that God wants bad things for anybody. We make our own decisions, right? We have consequences, whether good or bad. The one thing that I love about what God does is that if we truly want something different, He will take good out of the bad and make it amazing. And that's how I look back on. Now I'm getting emotional. um, that's how I look back on my life, is because after everything I've been through, to hit that point of I don't want to live anymore, to God help me help somebody else. My only prayer when I finally said, okay, God, I'm done thinking this way. I want a different life. I want to think more positively. My only prayer was, help me find good in what I have been through all these years so that I can help somebody else find good in their trauma. And what amazes me is God has brought more than one person into my life. And that's where my joy is seeing that from my experience, from my story, that was traumatic and not as traumatic as some people, but traumatic enough to where now I see all these blessings that God's bringing. And that just amazes me. That is the one thing that when you start healing and if you truly believe in God, um, you will find.
I legitimately could write a book just on the miracles of God. Like there were moments when I was like, yeah, there's no way we're gonna starve. We're gonna be evicted, can't pay what like legitimately, like there's no explanation. Just
Mhm.
and yeah. So it's yeah, it's a beautiful picture of just love and mercy and grace and all things.
Yeah. The amazing journeys that we have when we truly want to be
Mhm.
who we were made to be, you know?
Right.
And that's what I try to tell people. This is a journey of becoming who you were supposed to be.
Mhm.
So let's let's figure out what that is and find I want people to find a purpose. And some people they're already living it, don't even know it. And some people are like, I don't need it, but we're all here for a purpose. So
Absolutely.
that's
Love
a
it.
whole nother episode as well. Oh
I
my
know there's
goodness.
so many topics.
We
Oh,
went from, we go from laughing to crying. It's like an
I know.
emotional roller coaster on.
I know, but I love it.
But no, this has been fantastic, and I know we're gonna do more episodes because that's just where our heart is, and I know we're gonna become fast friends and have so many things. I won't divulge anything yet because nothing is set in stone, but I'm so excited for what's gonna be coming, and Miss Tammy's gonna help us, get it to where it's supposed to go, and I don't know, in 6 months, it could be a whole different thing. I'm pretty excited, but Um, thank you so much, and I will put Miss Tammy's information, her coaching information, in the bio, as we always do, and you will see her on more episodes. I'm almost positive of that. But I appreciate her, and thank you so much for being on the show today. And thank you everyone for joining us for another episode of Soul Hygiene. We will see you later. Bye for now.